I'm Vish Patel and I'm a compositor at Pixamundo. I grew up in a city called Leicester. My parents moved over there from India, so I'm a British-born Indian. And so as a kid, I was always interested in drawing and art. And when I went to school, I did art classes and I went to media studies as well. And from the guidance of my teachers when I was there and the rise of digital media, they really suggested I did a digital media course. And from there, in university, I went to London and I did like CG games course, as you know, that was a booming industry at the time. And obviously as a kid, I also liked playing video games. So that was what I wanted to do when I was younger. And I did a course at uni. My course tutor was a guy called Colin Harvey. He's actually just released a book recently called When Worlds Collide, so look him up if you're interested. But when I graduated, it was a super competitive field. There were lots of people trying to get in to the industry as modelers or texture artists, and basically I needed to pay rent in London, and I ended up taking up loads of different other jobs as well. So I worked in retail on Oxford Street, which was really busy, and then I worked in like customer service roles, done sales, and I even worked as tech support for a charity as well. And which I really loved that job, because it's not often you get to work in a place where everyone who works there just want to make the world a better place. So it was actually quite a nice place to be. But after a few years doing that, I genuinely thought this was going to be my career. I was going to be in tech support. It's too late to go back. And I thought I was just going to be in tech support my whole time. And I was learning more and more about IT and doing my IT type stuff. But then the day came when I learned I was going to be made redundant from my job. And that's when I sort of decided I wanted to go back and try to do something creative again. And my friend at the time, she had finished a course at Escape Studios here in London. They do courses for like visual effects, all kinds of 3D and animation type stuff. And she suggested to me, why don't I go to an open day and see what they've got? I'd rather go to an open day. I just sent them an email straight away just saying, hey, I want to do a course, but I want to have a job immediately at the end of it. Where's the demand in the industry? What's the best course I can do? And they invited me into the studio to have a look, and they basically told me, compositing was a good career to go into. So I was like, great, what's compositing? And then they had a taster session on the same day, and they showed me a breakdown from a scene from Doctor Who. And they demonstrated how they first started with the sky, and they layered some mountains on top, then some foliage, some trees, rocks, and then they put Doctor Who on top and graded him in, and then graded the other elements as well to look like it was all part of one world. And as they were explaining it, I understood what they were doing as they were going along, and then that's when I decided to learn compositing. So in a weird way, VFX sort of found me. I didn't really find VFX, it found me. And basically I was going to classes in the evening, so I did a part-time course at Escape. So I was working during the day, and then studying in the evening, and then doing my roto and doing my keying in my spare time at night. So sometimes I'd even fall asleep in the classes, but I knew it was something I wanted to do and I wanted to pursue, and I carried on with it. And then just about as I was getting into the industry, COVID happened, the pandemic, and it was a bit of a disastrous situation really, where I just got made redundant from my job. I learned some new skills. I was looking forward to putting it to some use, but then during COVID, there were just not that many jobs around. So it was just kind of a time where it's just like, try to survive the best you can. Fortunately, I had some savings, and through some other kind of government support, I got by. But also, it gave me time to hone my skills in compositing, and I eventually decided I was going to get a tutor, and I got a guy, some of you might know him, his name's Josh Parks. He's quite well known in the industry, and he shares a lot of knowledge. He has tutorials, he has a website called Compositing Pro, and he basically taught me for 1 hour a week over Zoom, and he was mentoring me, teaching me some industry, or basically his career condensed it all into those lessons, and he was teaching me everything that he knew. And we did that for 3 months, and we made sure I had a good solid show reel. And then he put me out, sent me to go onto LinkedIn to ask other artists for feedback. And that was quite difficult for me at the time because I'm really introverted and I was a really quiet kid. I was the shy, quiet kid. And that was quite a difficult experience for me. But you have to do it. It was a time of sort of now and never type thing. And in the pandemic, in some ways, it was easier to network because you don't have to meet people face to face. I could just send them messages. So I would go onto LinkedIn, I would send messages to other compositing artists, and I would just say like, hey, I've seen your show reel, I really like this thing that you worked on, and I want to be a compositor in the future, here's my show reel, if you have time, can you please give me some feedback? And that's basically what I was doing, and Josh sent me a target of sending a message to 5 people a day. I think in reality I did about 2 or 3 a day, maybe, sometimes per week. But the industry is quite small and you don't want to like target people, especially all from the same company as well. You just kind of want to go around and ask. And you know, everyone replies, and sometimes that's the way. I'm sure many people have applied for a job and never heard back. It's just how it is. But there are a couple of people that did reply, and that was super useful. And they gave me feedback, and then I would improve my work and I'd show them again. You know, basically, you're making a rapport there, and maybe one day they'll recommend you to something. But also that's the job as well. You ask for you get feedback on your shots, and then you have to implement your feedback and you submit it again. So that's effectively the job. And you kind of get used to doing that and asking for feedback. And then during COVID, streaming services were kind of picking up. We had like Netflix and Disney Plus was starting, Amazon was entering, so there was a lot of demand, and I was getting regular work through there. And my first job was at a company called VFX. They were based in Manchester, so I was working remotely for that job, which again was an interesting challenge because again, when I was learning compositing or when I was getting tips from people, they would always say, oh, when you go to the studio, someone would sit next to you and they'll help you and you can ask them questions. But of course, working remotely for your first job, that was really nerve-wracking, and you have to find your feet, or at least change the way you communicate with people so you can try and get answers to everyday things that you're working on. And so basically learned my trade there. I did lots of roto and prep when I was at VFX and got my name on a few local shows here on the local TV channels here in the UK. And then from there I got approached by NPC, and then got to work on things there. My first project was Pinocchio, which was my first almost full CG show that I worked on, so that was really interesting. And also that was the first time I actually went to the office as well, and I got to meet all of the other artists that were there, and I'm still friends with all those people in the artists. So PC, it's not there anymore, but people that I worked with, I'm friends with so many of them. I'm still in touch with some of the supervisors that I work with as well. And then from NPC I went to Frame Store, and then I got into Outpost, and then now Pixamondo. And the industry's been tough, but fortunately work does come every once in a while, and just have to find your way to keep yourself competitive. We've had a few challenges in recent years. We've had actors strikes, we've just had cost of living in general across the world, so it's really challenging times. And there have been long periods when I've not had work, and there was a point maybe like a year or 2 ago where I was applying for jobs and just getting nothing. And I sat down and was thinking to myself lots of different things. I want to stay in this industry? Do I, otherwise, what else could I do? Do I do other film related things until the VFX picks up again? What other things can I do? And basically just sat down and thought about how I could stand out from everybody else, because there were a few jobs going, but they were all going to senior people or people that had way more experience than me. So I was just thinking, what else can I do to make myself stand out? And I did a few things. I worked on a short film for a director. He was just doing a thesis film, and he just needed some VFX tidying up some shots. And I reached out to him because he was looking for artists to clean up some shots. And I said, hey, happy to see what you've got going on, and then I can make a decision. And his film quality was really good. He had a really good attention to lighting, and his use of position was just really good. So I signed up for that. And one of the things that they wanted to do was de-age a van, because the film was set in the 70s. But the van, which they actually did have the van that they wanted that from the 70s there, but it broke down on the day. So they ended up replacing it with a more modern van. So we had to de-age the van. And at the time, we don't have any huge departments. So he just gave me the 3D model of the van. He was like, here you go, make it work. And and then obviously I didn't have any massive lighting experience. I've never had to do any layout stuff. So there I was in Blender with this van, track my own shot and then track the CG, make sure the lighting sort of matches. And basically he wanted to get 70 shots done in the space of about 3-4 months. And each shot was almost taking a week to get done. So it wasn't really possible. So with me and my lead, we had a lead there, we just kind of had a discussion just saying, how we can speed up this workflow, and basically found a 2D solution. And it turned out the director really wasn't precious about 3D model at all. He had zero experience with VFX, and he was just like, well, you just press a button and it works. So we found like a 2D solution that worked, and we managed to get a few other artists on board, some students as well, to just try and get this film over the line. So that was a really good experience, and that's just something I could just put on my CV and talk about. And the other things that I did was that I learned Python, and actually with one of the guys, you might have seen the video in this same channel before, called Alexander Richter. I actually did one of his Python courses, and that was just another way for me to put something on my CV to stand out a bit more that I knew a bit of Python. So we made a tool on his course that we could show off and share with people and talk about in interviews. And one of the other things I did was that I volunteered at my local charity in London. So there was a trust at the end of our street, and they basically help people with like food bank vouchers and offered free legal advice to who couldn't afford it basically. And all these experiences, then I had lots of stuff to put on my CV. When I did apply for a job, which was with Pixamondo, and they asked me what I'd been doing in between my jobs, and I had all this stuff that I tried and all I was doing, and I think it might have just helped me get a job doing free volunteer work. There's lots of people that say you shouldn't work for free. Lots of people were telling me that, like, Vish, you're doing too much for free, like, do it. But honestly, I think it paid off, and I think that's volunteering sometimes something people should do just to make themselves stand out a bit more. It's quite difficult to pick one, if I'm honest with you. I think maybe for a lot of people, you just enjoy the work, you just enjoy the process a lot of the time, minus some of crazy crunch periods, but like generally you just kind of enjoy the project that you're working in. There's always just this nice, exciting moment when you see behind the scenes of the camera. So even just seeing the raw footage from like blue screen action, it's kind of always interesting to seeing that, and then looking at what the other part, as a compositor, you look at the end of the shot, where everyone else gives you all of the assets, so you kind of get to see everyone's work, and then you get to be the one that integrates it. So it's quite a nice place to be. And there are lots of projects that I liked working on. I worked on Little Mermaid, but I really enjoyed that, just mostly because of the team that I had. So we were doing stereo comps for that, which basically means you have to watch it through 3D glasses, and we had to make sure it worked properly in 3D. And in London, it was just me, Lewis Duncombe, and my supervisor, who's Nicholas Casanova. And it was just basically us trying to set up the show and making sure we're getting things done to make sure that it worked in 3D. And because we were such a small team, we were really close-knit, and I just really appreciated working alongside of those guys. When I was working at Framestore, I got to be put on Loki season 2. And the funny thing is that I'm not actually a big superhero buff by any means. When I interviewed at Framestore, I even told them I don't like superhero films. And the supervisor who interviewed me fortunately saw the funny side of that. That could have been horrible either way. But he saw the funny side of it. And then when I joined the company, the first thing they put me on was on Loki. And I was just like, oh, they put me on a superhero film or a Marvel lead film. And it turned out that Loki was actually a really cool project to work on. I'm sure people who are fans of the Marvel projects, like that one was probably one of the better looking ones that they did. And it also had a really good story. So I remember this one sequence that they had, which was the record shop sequence, which is in episode 5 of season 2, where basically the character comes in and the world slowly is spaghettifying, like things are dispersing into strings. And whilst this lady's in the record shop, Sylvie is the character, she's sitting there listening, and then the world all of a sudden just starts disappearing. And when I saw the camera work for that shot, it was just done really well. And although I didn't get to directly work on it, that sequence is what got me into Loki, basically. Then I went back and I watched season 1. And when season 2 came out, I couldn't wait to watch it because I made friends with all the artists on there, and it was a really cool project. And Pixamondo, the project that we worked on there was Doctor Who, which was like a nice full circle moment, because when I was at Escape Studios and I did the open day, they showed me the breakdown of Doctor Who. And then a few years later on, here I am working on Doctor Who, so that was like a really cool moment to be on. And yeah, the team again at Pixamondo was really great, and I'm back with them again, working on some new stuff, and some really exciting things coming from those guys, and I really love working there. So all I can say is that it's the people that you work with that generally will influence if the project is good or not. And as fortunately, the industry is full of some really nice people, and I've made lots of friends that most projects that I get put on, I'm generally having a good time either way, because everyone's just really friendly, really nice. And at the end of the day, we're all just trying to make beautiful pictures, and I love doing that. So that's really good. So any memorable moments in my career? I mean, again, I'll go back to the people that you work with. The relationships that you build tend to be the most memorable. I remember for one company, I used to speak with lots of other artists, and I went to the photo prep people, because they're generally juniors in the industry, and usually they'll have questions. They all want to be compositors. So I generally try to talk to all the roto prep people. If I can share some tips with them, I will as well. And I remember one of them at one point stopped me mid-conversation. He was like, "Vish, I'm really sorry, but can I just say thank you? Usually compositors don't come talk to us, so thank you for coming over." And yeah, that's not to say I'm not trying to put any bad feeling in towards other compositors, but it was just a moment for me personally. Me going around talking to other people, including juniors, it was just a nice reflective moment that they appreciated that. So I try to do that more often. Recently in my career, I have done a few events where I've spoken at student events. I was on Film and TV Educators Network recently, where they were teachers who were doing VFX courses were asking me lots of questions, so I was doing one of those recently. And again, pulled back with the volunteer work that I was doing before. I think it's important to give something back. Really grounding experience, and also just helps you grow personally as well. And we're in an industry where lots of complex things happen. So if you can talk to people about what you're doing in a language that they understand as well, because not everyone understands what compositing is. No one understands the stuff that you use in compositing, but you have to explain these things to your production teams or people in different departments. You have to speak a language where we can all make these beautiful pictures at the end. So I think anything that you can do to help you communicate better is always a good thing to do. The most used software compositors use is Nuke. There's already a few people on this channel who've already said a similar thing. And Nuke is great. You can bring in just about any footage. You can bring in DMP, CG, and there's lots of tools there to help you integrate the things that you need to do. And honestly, I want to do everything in Nuke if it's possible. But since lots of other people have already mentioned Nuke, I'll talk about some other things that people don't really talk about as much. So, as strange as it sounds, but I think Excel is actually a really good piece of software everyone should learn. So keeping spreadsheets of the shot that you're on, what lighting version you're using, what DMP you're using, what roto version you're using, what the latest notes are, what the latest client notes are. Keeping a spreadsheet of all these things, of all the shots that you work on, is really useful. Especially when you're getting reviews on your work, because these are common questions that your supervisor will ask you all the time. And if you have that information readily in front of you, you instantly help him out, you help the coordination team out, and people will recognize that actually this guy is really organized. So having spreadsheets with all this information in, almost like cheating, because when they ask for the information, you've got the answers right there. And it's a really good way for you to get recognized and build a good reputation. Also, this information is really useful for the coordinators in particular. So on the production side of things, they do a lot of work. A lot of them is kind of managing us, the artists. They also need to be able to answer any of the artist questions as well, in terms of what versions things are at, what state the shot is at. So if you have this information readily available and you're updating it, and you update the production team as well, I guarantee you they will love you and they will trust you. And that's the kind of relationships you want to have with production. It's their job to ask you how you're doing, what are you doing, where is this at, how close are you to finishing your work. Sometimes those are questions people don't like being asked, but that is their job, and you have to try to understand from their perspective, and we have to try and make their life easy as well. And you know, they're all real people as well, so be nice to them, know your numbers. If anyone asks you questions, not that anyone's gonna not believe you in your answers, but if you always have numbers to back yourself up, that's just a way that you'll avoid being pushed into an uncomfortable place, basically. So open Excel or use Google Spreadsheets and just make notes of things that are useful and common, that knowledge that everyone's always going to ask questions about. So that's the best advice I can give you. Also, just things, how long you spent on a shot, how many hours you put in. If you're working freelance, especially log what you were doing during what times, because if a client will ask you, hey, what did you do in your day, then you'll always have this, and you won't have to try to retrace in your memory or backstep something you did 2 weeks ago. So like Excel is a good thing to have on your second screen, just so you're updating information as you're going along. It might be tedious at first, but like once you get into the flow of it and just being organized, trust me, it's gonna help you out so much later on. That's a big topic, a loaded question. We'll address the obvious thing in that AI is something that's coming for us, but I don't think it's going to be in a position that it's going to replace artists. But certainly I think we need to change our attitudes towards AI, because it's here whether we like it or not, and you can try to stay away from it as much as you can, but I actually think you're actually putting yourself at a disadvantage there. I think you need to investigate what some of the AI tools are, just so you can stay slightly ahead of the curve, just so you can have informed conversations with people. You need to know what these tools are, and ultimately it's going to be the artist that shapes how we use AI in our software. So I definitely think it's worth looking into. I personally have played around with Comfy UI. There's lots of material out there, and you can spend a few weeks just having a look at what it does, and then you don't need to touch it again. But the other side of that is that you can spend a few weeks looking at what it does, and then you can realize how much potential there actually is behind these things. There's a good YouTube series by Alex Villabond, who's a VFX hoop. He's put a bunch of videos in, so if you're interested in looking into Comfy, check him out. And yeah, so with regards to Comfy, I think it was going to be really helpful to people who are doing pre-visualization work. When you're showing the client, what it's going to look like when the CG is put in. Typically, this would normally be like a really blocky look. Some people would just send like play blasts of their CG. There's no textures on it, it's just grayscale. And that's how we used to do it. But with stuff like Comfy, you can generate images really quickly without having to know any CG or even retexturing. You can do it all there really quick on the fly. So I think for pre-vis, it's going to work really well. And then once the client approves of a look, you can then build it properly. And I think that'd be really good to speeding those things along. The other things which I think is going to be exciting for the future of VFX is there's an uptake of virtual production now. So the Pixelmondo, the company I'm working at now, they have huge studios where they have really large screens, and they have the actors film, and then the director normally have a blue screen there, but now that they're actual screens, you can project the environment on there, and it allows them to make more creative decisions. And some of those things are now using Unreal, and you can make lots of environments that way, and I think that's also an exciting thing to do. And one of the upcoming shows I'm working on is utilizing Unreal as well, so I'm also having to play around with Unreal in comp, and it's cool, honestly, it's good. I think the number one tip I can give you is to get a camera or gain access to a camera and get used to filming and photography, understanding how things look on a lens, because at the end of the day, we're putting stuff, the work that we do is making it look like it was filmed on camera, so the better understanding that you have of composition and focus and all of these things is really going to help your work. And also when you're doing comps, sometimes you will have to mask things out in the shot or hide things, so your understanding of how the eye works, where to direct the viewer's eye all of knowledge around that is going to be really beneficial with your phone. And then just try put a VFX element in it, whatever you want. You open the software, try to put in some smoke, try to add an explosion, try to add a Godzilla, or whatever you want. Film something, put a VFX element in it, and get used to that workflow, because that's basically what we're doing in our jobs. So get used to that. The next thing I would say is that I've sort of mentioned already that the industry is quite difficult and sometimes there are not jobs going on, but you do need to focus on what you can promote yourself out there, and I had to do a little bit of that as well earlier on. So actually, really as recently as last year, I was trying to think about how else can I promote myself, and I bought a new camera and I thought I'd take some more pictures and improve my photography, and then maybe even sell some pictures on the side, because my main job wasn't there, but we might need to find other sources of income. The world is kind of moving into a place where you need multiple income sources to survive. Just having the one job doesn't seem to be enough anymore, which sounds crazy because it was already like 30, 40 years ago, one person could work in a factory and that was enough money for them to buy a house, have a wife, have a husband, have 2 kids, have a car, have a dog. But we're not living in those times anymore, and so we're gonna have to find other ways to make money. So if you can be open and minded and sell some other talents that you have, I think that's going to be good. So content generation is one of them. Selling photography, if you're in my field, you could also get into painting, sell some paintings. There's people I've worked with who they're good at baking, and they would even professionally sell some cookies on the side. There's a guy at DNEG, I've forgotten his name, but he's a chocolatier. He makes his own chocolate and he sells it on the side whilst he's doing VFX supervision during the day. So whatever you can do to maybe not necessarily have an additional income stream, but you're promoting yourself, that you're putting yourself out there, I think is beneficial to you. And just share the work that you do, share your creative side, and I think people will take notice. Recruiters will see you, they will see you putting things out there, they'll see you're a creative person, and I think you should definitely put yourself out there. About LinkedIn a bit more. Another tip I would say is try to get feedback on your work and your showreel. It might not even be showreel, it might be a still picture of something, it might be CG you've created. Try to get feedback on it from other artists, but then actually implement that feedback and show them. And try to do that within a reasonable amount of time. If someone gives you notes on your work and you can do it within 1 to 2 weeks and show them again, if you can do it within days, even better, but if you can do it quickly and show them again, you're already building a good rapport there that you can do the work, and then if a job was to appear, they might recommend you. So definitely get used to doing that. If you can, put yourself out on LinkedIn and make connections with people you're interested in as well. Try to be part of other networks, try to go to some events if you can. And networking, again, as someone who was introverted, it was really difficult at the time, but honestly, all you need to do is just go up to someone and say hi. And then you've already established a bond, and then you can start talking about what they do or any interesting questions that they might do. If you want to ask for feedback, just make sure you're coming across as genuine, that you don't sound like a robot. If I would say as well, is actually when LinkedIn asks you to use AI to write your response, I would tell you not to use AI, because the danger is you start sounding like everyone else who uses AI, and if you want to be taken notice, you want to sound more like you. We're interested in you, we're not interested in AI, we're not interested in what ChatGPT sounds like, we're interested in what you sound like. So I would suggest you spend a bit of time curating something that sounds like you, and that you're just being your genuine self. And continue asking for feedback, do those notes, just be the nicest person you possibly can, and keep knocking on doors and doors will open. Lastly, just try to stay visible and try to stay active. I joked with my friend earlier that you need to try and stay healthy. So if you're not in a healthy state, that affects your creativity as well. It will stifle your creativity. So make sure you are drinking your water, you're eating your food, you're being healthy, you're being active, and you're staying positively mentally as well. And just be creative. Stress less, be more people don't be afraid to accept jobs outside VFX. And I know that's kind of like, but I studied VFX and I need to get work in there. Honestly, with the state of the job market at the minute, firstly, it's more important that you just survive and you live comfortably So don't be afraid to take a job that's outside of VFX, or if you want to keep it film related, you know, try to look for production stuff, or you can work at your local cinema, but ultimately just take a job where you can afford things, but also you're gaining experience, because you're going to be working with different people all of the time. And whatever job you're in, you're always going to be working with people. You're always going to have to communicate with these people. You're always going to have to navigate around these challenges that come up in your job, and you'll always reflect on how you will handle these challenges better in future. And these are all transferable skills that you can bring into VFX later on when there is a job that you can get. If you have experience of being able to talk and communicate really well, that's something every company is going to love. So if you can get that experience, it's great. Then just go out there and get it. Everyone loves working with people who fits well in a team. And if you can be that one person who's worked in lots of different teams, different sizes, different ages, different people, and you're able to work harmoniously with these people, then every company is going to want you afterwards. So don't be afraid to take a job outside of VFX. And like myself as well, earlier on I said I had to work in retail, I worked in sales, I worked in customer service, I was doing tech support. I thought my career was going a different way, but I was able to pay my bills and I was earning okay money, especially in the tech support job. So other avenues may open and then you can always return. So just keep going, and eventually with the experience that you gain, you can bring that everywhere else, and just keep focusing on yourself and your own growth, what you can do to improve yourself, and those things. Every company is going to look for a person who's like that. Hey Manoj, I just want to say thanks for letting me do this. Honestly, you've had some great artists on your YouTube already, so I'm really honored to be here, so thanks.